Welcome. I want to thank InterNACHI. We've got a little history of doing presentations for you guys. Years and years ago, we attended the national event in Longmont and got to do a whole seminar on drones. And by then, they were really new. And the fun part was we had a drone booth, and people would come by, both companies and also, mom and pop inspector groups too. And several of the mom and pop folks came up, and the wife would say, "Can you teach my husband to fly a drone?" Sure. Why? I don't want him on roofs anymore. I want him to inspect the roof with a drone. I said, sure, okay. So I hope we got some people interested there. A year or so later, I did present the course that I teach. I teach a 2-day monthly how to get your drone license course. Going to tell you more about it at the end, but I teach that every month near Centennial Airport. And I got to do that at InterNACHI next to the House of Horrors a couple of years ago also. So I really appreciate the invites I've gotten from you and the folks I've met in your group. So let me bring up the screen share headline. And AJ has asked me, AJ took my course and he gave an endorsement and said, Greg, can you peel off the front of that where you talk about what is a drone license and how do you get it? So if I can find the right screen here, and the right lights go on and it says share. And AJ, tell me, is it sharing? Because I usually get a little green bar around my picture and I don't see it here. Is it working?
Yep.
Do you see drone license? Why do I need it? How do I get it? That's really what I need to see.
We got your PowerPoint.
Okay, good. So that's the question I'm going to answer. And so let's drive through that. And I hope this is the best seminar you've gotten. If I can't do this really well, I've been teaching with other folks the drone license since 2016, since the license came out. So have some good exposure to this. So let's move forward. Headline, you know this, drones are valuable tools for home inspections. This has been, last couple of years, it's gotten more and more interesting to folks. And like I said, I've had members of InterNACHI in my classes before. Quick summary of the virtues of a drone, but you know this. I think the top one, like I said, for the wives and the couples, owners of inspection companies, safety, really like the safety aspect of it. Speed, you want to get up and look at something quickly, you can do that, get it to a hard to reach rotation quickly. Detail, you can get close in. Drones today have pretty good obstacle avoidance, so they can get close without banging into things. Flexibility, you can get photos, you can shoot videos and thermal images. I'll come up with a few examples at the end of the show. Savings, hey, you can complete an inspection more quickly. Well, that's time. Time is money. So if you can get out and get an inspection done faster, that's good news. And finally, you can produce reports faster with solid evidence because of the close-ups you can get, the detail you can get with the drone, those pictures, those videos, create a really solid report, and you can give it to the client, you can give it to the insurance folks, whatever. So it really helps out. So those are the opportunities you can do with a drone inspection. So, okay, why is there a drone license? Real simple. Drones are allowed to fly up to 400 feet above the ground. Okay, great. That's the license with the person you get it. Here's the problem. All aircraft fly up to 400 feet above the ground. Everything that takes off and lands, airlines, helicopters, rockets, balloons, you name it, they all take off and fly through 400 feet above the ground. So monitoring all of this is the Federal Aviation Administration. The FAA is a safety agency, and their job is to enable the vitality of all the aviation things we want to do. We want to move passengers and cargo, and we want to fly for fun, and we want to, inspect with drones. Have all these things flying in the sky safely, avoiding each other. So the FAA is a safety agency. That's why they issue pilots' licenses to make sure pilots are safe. And so you can see here the quote actually out of the instruction, one of the instructions they have for the licenses, the FAA needs to ensure that drone pilots have demonstrated that they understand regulations, operating requirements, and procedures for safely flying drones. So that's part of, if you take a drone course to pass the test, that's what they want, that you're going to be safe. I've broken out a few extra steps because if you asked an FAA person, really, what do you want to see from a drone pilot? They've got a license, they're going to fly a drone. What do you expect? So down here, the FAA expects that they will operate safely, They will apply risk management because they expect all pilots to do risk management. I'll talk about that later. Avoid controlled airspace. There's parts of the sky that drones are not allowed in without permission. So that's generally airports and restricted areas. And drone pilots have to be able to figure out ahead of time where they want to fly if in fact they are in controlled airspace. And if they need to get permission, how do they get permission? Or if they're in restricted airspace and if they might need permission to do that also. That would be like restricted airspace is not aviation related, but it could be Fort Carson firing their howitzers into the sky for soldier training. So there are reasons to know where you are flying so you don't get in trouble. And finally, the bottom line is not create hazards to other aircraft, other persons, or property. So an awful lot of aviation, all flying is based on go do what you need to do as long as you do never become a hazard to persons or property. So that's why there's a drone license to make sure we can fly safely where we want to fly up to 400 feet and not have any conflicts with any other aviation traffic. So who needs a drone license? Okay, two factors to need it. It's pretty simple, but you might say, Greg, why do I need a drone license? And this is out of the Part 107 rule. If you're flying a drone not under recreation or hobby rules, you need a drone license. Greg, that's a huge negative. What do you mean? No, I'm flying not under hobby rules. So let me back up. The FAA sees drone flight in two legal categories. There's hobby flying, where you have a drone and you go out and you're not making money, you're just having a good time, flying around, taking pictures, looking from the view, shooting videos. And at the end of the day, you're not selling anything you did, you're not getting paid to do it. That was a hobby flight. And then there's everything else, which they want everything else covered by a license, which is Part 107. The FAA wrote the law this way because in 2015, 16, when they were drafting the law, they really had no idea what are all the things people are going to invent to do with drones. They didn't know if there'd be air taxis. Oh, there will be. Pretty soon you'll get in a drone. You won't be able to fly it. It'll take you somewhere. All kinds of companies, Google, Amazon, are working on delivering packages with drones. I mean, there's a huge future for drones. And the FAA just wanted to be sure if it's anything other than hobby, you need a license because you need to know all these rules about airspace and where to be safe and not safe. So that's number one. And a subset of that is anyone getting any compensation for drone flying. Definitely, if your boss is paying you to fly a drone or your customer is paying you to fly a drone, you need a license. Or providing value. Some of you may volunteer to your county emergency search teams. I get lots of volunteers in training who work for the volunteer teams that back up sheriffs for search and rescue, especially in Colorado in the mountains. So they're providing value by by offering their drone flight services, and that value requires a license because they're providing a value to another agent. Second, flying the drone in the national airspace system. The United States has a national airspace system. What is it? It's basically the sky over any US state or territory, and the FAA gets to make rules for anybody who wants to fly in that sky, whether it's a monster airliner, whether it's rockets, whether it's drones. So you go outside and jump, and you are in the national airspace system, and you got to follow the FAA's rules on whatever they've made for being in the sky. So that's it. So clearly, if you are using a drone for your business, you fall under number one. You're flying a drone for other than hobby, and you should get a license. By the way, as an aside, if you talk to the FAA and you say, I want to be a drone pilot, they would say, please get a license. They would love for all people who fly drones regularly to get a license. That's their point of view. The hobbyists make them nervous because hobbyists they don't control and don't have, they can't check them firsthand and see how they're doing. So anyway, that's who needs a license. Moving along, requirements to earn the license. By the way, I did just, so you guys can get a little bit different picture here. I can switch back to me and just stop share so I'm not doing this from the kitchen. So this little blue card is what you're after right here. Let me get it to focus in here if I can. Come on, camera, find it, find it, find it. There you go. So that's my card. I'm a remote pilot. Your certificate says you are a remote pilot. That is the unique category of drone pilots. We are called remote pilots, but we're still called pilots. So we are pilots like a 747 pilot or a 787 pilot. We are pilots too. We are licensed by the FAA. We get a pretty little blue card like that we get to carry in our wallet, and that is our license. So let me get back into the presentation here. And okay, hopefully you're seeing that. Blue card. And so this is the license that came out in 2016. The FAA introduced this remote pilot certificate. That's what's written on it, but it's the pilot license. It is the new kind of beginner license for flying. It's lower requirement than being other kinds of pilot, sport pilot, recreation pilot, or a private pilot where you can take out your airplane and go fly up in the sky, pretty much unrestricted. So this is the new entry-level pilot for all of the FAA, and it's the very first license the FAA has issued where the pilot is not in or on top of the airplane. This is the license for when you are flying a device remotely. It's over there, you over here, and you are controlling it from that connection. Requirements to get the drone license. Okay, you will study this. It's also on the test, but I'm going to give it to you because this is part of getting a drone license. You got to be 16 years old. And Greg, can people that young do a drone? Oh, people that young are great. I get high school kids. I've got one next week in my class. They are programmed to learn. It's fun to have high school kids because they're in sort of the sponge mode of learning. So not a problem. And also, you know, the knowledge you need for this test is high school level. So it's not complicated. You have to be able to, oh, by the way, you can solo an airplane at 16 years old. I mean, if you didn't know that, you're actually allowed, if you have a flight instructor and go through flight training, you can solo, you know, all by yourself, an airplane at 16 years old. So why not let folks be drone pilots at 16 years old? We do. You need to be able to read, write, and speak the English language. Very straightforward. You need to be in a physical and mental condition to safely fly a drone. So you might think, do I need to take a physical? No. Do I need to, you know, carry papers around that say I'm healthy? Nope. The only this is a self-evaluation thing that you learn a lot. You've got to self-evaluate. How am I feeling today? Am I safe to fly? Same way you would for driving. Am I safe to drive? And we know, you know, we get a lot of information on don't drive when you're hammered or stoned or whatever. Same thing with flying. Don't go fly a drone or don't fly an airplane if you are not in a physical and medical condition to safely fly a drone. Finally, you have to pass the airman knowledge exam, which I'll talk about in much more detail here in just a second. Now, here's the interesting thing. This is the most bizarre thing about the drone license. There is no drone flight proficiency requirement, meaning you do not need to show anybody you've ever touched a drone, seen a drone, know what a drone looks like. You don't have to fly a drone from anybody. All you have to do is pass the exam. So that's very generous. Although they figure out, you know, the interesting thing, I think the FAA's theory is you will learn to fly your drone safely because otherwise you're going to destroy your $1,200 or $2,000 drone. So you are going to want to learn to fly it safely. You're going to want to learn to do it right. And in the flying world, there's a thing called, in the pilot world, a thing called recurrent training. It's wonderful this exists. It means that for whatever aircraft or type of flying you do, if you want to keep doing it, then at least every 2 years, you have to do what's called recurrent training. So if you have a private pilot license, then before 2 years is over, if you want to keep flying, you get with an instructor, you do ground school briefs, you talk about flying again, make sure you're all current on flying knowledge, and then you will either get in an airplane or a legal simulator, and you will fly. And the instructor will watch your flying, and they might talk you through emergencies, hopefully not create one, but you know what happens if right now your engine quits and you talk about it. So that's great. It means that pilots who are in manned aircraft, and if you ever fly with somebody in one, this is great because they got to do this, make sure pilots are current. Same thing, airline pilots do it way more frequently. I think they do it every 6 months. Now, you do have to do that in the drone world. The good news is, in order to keep your flying privileges beyond 2 years, so at the end of a 2-year cycle, you need to do a recurrent training. And it sounds like, Greg, is that hard? No. Here's the good news. It is online and it's free. It takes about 3 or 4 hours. It's basically a little online seminar, and you do a little open book test at the end that they won't let you fail, because if you check the wrong answer, it says try again. So you'll always get 100, which is good news. But anyway, you're not going to spend any more money after you've bought your license or paid your, you know, your training or whoever in the future to maintain your drone license. And you might say, Greg, what happens after 2 years? I didn't do anything. Here's what happens. Nothing. No marshals show up at your door. Nobody says, hey, you know, you're past your 2. You just have to know that you are 2 years beyond your currency and you've lost your flight privileges. So who's going to find out? Well, one thing you'll learn with the license is you must carry this license. And if it's more than 2 years old, you have to print out that you did the extensions with you. So if someone, and so if any law enforcement can ask you to see your license, they can ask, show me your drone license and show me any extensions if your drone license is more than 2 years old. And you have to show it to them. And if it's not current, they can get a report, write it up, send it to the FAA and say, hey, we caught so-and-so flying a drone and they could not show a current license. Well, that's how you get caught. So you do want to stay current with your license. So you got your license. What are you allowed to do with your drone license? Of course, I thought you were going to go out and make money. Absolutely. I don't know if anybody knows Phil Smith. Phil Smith was a member of InterNACHI. I should have emailed him. Phil took my course 3 years ago. There's his graduation. He is a graduate of this, and he's based in Boulder. He's a home inspector up there. So I used his picture, and Phil, I hope you don't mind. This is a graduation picture. You can fly a drone when you've got a license with remote ID working. Craig, what's remote ID? New system on drones started this March that they're enforcing it. Drones today are required to send out constantly a position signal. Here I am, it's me, here's my serial number. I'm up this high off the ground, going this direction. Oh no, by the way, my pilot is over there. Yes, they actually do send out the signal where the pilot is, which is very controversial. But anyway, that's required. Well, why does the FAA require drones today to send out a little here I am signal? Because everybody wants drones someday to be able to fly long distances beyond line of sight. And the FAA says, okay, we'll get there. But the first thing is we have to have a system where drones tell you where they are. And then eventually we can monitor them through radar or, right now it's Wi-Fi. It's pretty simple and doesn't go very far. But they're starting to build in networks where they can track drones. And that's the only way they could eventually say, okay, you may launch your drone, Google or Amazon, and allow that drone to fly over, neighborhood and go drop somebody's package in their backyard. So this is new, and your drones have to remote ID. By the way, drones today are required to show you remote ID is working. You don't have to worry about it. You just have to know it's working. So that will be a new thing for you. You are allowed to fly in allowed airspace. Well, you learn that in the license. What's allowed, what's not allowed, and I'll talk about maps in a minute. You can fly day and night. I don't know that you'd be very effective as an inspector at night, but you can fly a drone at night. You can fly up to 400 feet above the ground. That is the universal rule of all drones, hobby, commercial, etc. And it's very generous. And if you're ever flying at 400 feet, why did you bother? It takes too long, burns up your battery, and you can't see your drone. Most drone activity where you're gathering data is not much higher than 100 feet or above the ground or above whatever you're inspecting. Drones, are interested in gathering data from ground-based things. So that's good. Where we want to fly drones is the opposite of where airplanes want to go. They want to go high, drones want to go low. So you can get 400 feet is very generous. Now, this is the handcuff the FAA still has on the industry. You have to keep your drone in sight. You don't have to stare at it, but you do have to be able to, if you look down at your screen and then look up, you have to be able to see your drone. That is true for hobbyists and Part 107 today. And so that's called visual line of sight. You always have to keep the drone in visual line of sight. So when you look up, you know where your drone is. So that's what you can do. What you can't do, even with a license, is can't fly with no remote ID. If your drone says, hey, my remote ID is not working, can't fly. Controlled airspace, you learn that from the maps and from the course, and it shows you how to read an aviation map and figure out, oh, that's an airport, I can't go in there unless I have permission. You can't fly a drone out of your sight. That's called beyond visual line of sight. Today, that's not legal. And finally, you can't fly over people or moving traffic. Now, the FAA's idea of flying over people is their worst case idea is if your drone's flying along and suddenly it freezes, all the motors stop and it turns into a brick. That's the worst. It's very, I've never seen it happen, but that could happen with software. Just says, all right, I'm done, or a battery dies. So the FAA worries that if this is over people, it's going to hurt. So today you're not allowed to fly a drone over people where if it just turned into a brick, it would land on somebody. And the same thing goes for moving traffic, which they consider the same level of danger. Because if a drone dropped into a freeway, it could either cause someone an accident or it could do damage. So those are not legal. But there's a break in that, because the other thing people want to do with drones is they want to be able to fly over people legally because, there's news, there's crowds, there's gatherings and conventions and big outdoor, because they've been pounding on the FAA. Please, FAA, let us fly drones over people. So the FAA has begun a system called categories where they're allowing right now, category 1 drones are little bitty drones. They weigh under about half a pound and their blades are not exposed. And so they're tiny little buzzing drones with cameras, and they are legal now today to fly over people in traffic. And the idea is because they're half a pound and they don't weigh very much, and because they don't have open blades, if they fall on you, they're not going to hurt you too bad. So you will learn that in the drone course. So that's one thing that come on. But that's a little bit fundamental of what can you do when you've got your drone license. Okay, so I want to go on my drone license, Greg, and I'll talk about the course to learn it. That's what I teach, and there's online ways to do it. But so you've got your knowledge, you've practiced everything, and now you want to go earn your drone license. I've talked about the airman knowledge test. That's what you have to do, is pass the airman knowledge test. So this is the goal. You want to pass the airman knowledge test. I'll tell you about it. First of all, to sign up for this test, you actually have to go to the FAA website and create an account for yourself, but just name and address, and they will assign you what's called a tracking number, FTN, FAA tracking number, and you will use that to sign up for the FAA test. The FAA doesn't like people just to show up and start taking their tests because it takes time and tracking and checking. But so you get a tracking number. It's about an 8 or 9 digit number, and you have to get that before you can sign up for the test. The fee when you sign up for the test, and I'll show you the screen you sign up on, costs you $175. You pay the testing agency, that is the FAA's established national fee for the exam, so put that in your budget. The exam is computerized. You do it on a screen. I'll show you a picture of the screen in a minute. You're going to get 60 questions, 1 through 60. They come from a question bank that is easily over 500 questions. And your test will be different from everyone else's, because when you sit down and that test center puts your name in, a random generator grabs a bunch of those questions and makes you your own little personal test. Now, I believe, based on, I interview a lot of my students after the test, I believe some of those questions are weighted. They really want those questions to show up a lot because some of them do. Nevertheless, right then and there, they gave you plus or minus a few points because maybe you got questions that you love on weather because you love weather, or maybe you got a lot of questions on maps and you hate maps, but you got a lot of questions on maps. So don't worry. I mean, you're going to be in the passing zone, not a problem, but you get 60 questions there. They're multiple choice. You're going to get 3 answers to choose from. Generally, there's a very best answer and the others aren't so good. Occasionally, there's a best and then there's a pretty good. So you got to figure out the best. You get 2 hours to complete this exam, and I'll give you a headline. That is way too long, way too long. Really, Greg? Oh, you will be done. If you've done practice tests and done your homework, you will be done way before 2 hours. So if you are a person who has test anxiety about time, forget it. You'll be able to do the test and review it at least once, maybe twice, with the 2 hours. So that is not a problem. And finally, you need to get 42 of those questions correct out of 60. Oh my gosh, that is very generous. 70% to pass, and 70% wins. And you get 70%, you get a license and no one ever again ask you your score. You are a drone pilot. So it's like the thing, what do you call a guy he graduates the lowest in his class in medical school? Doctor. So the same thing, you get a 70 on your drone license, they will call you a remote pilot. So here's an orange book here. I'm actually going to come off screen and show this to you while I'm screen sharing. So let me get my little mouse over here and stop share and come back here. So you saw that orange book on the screen. This is the FAA testing supplement, and this is part of practicing for the FAA exam. And this will be on your desk when you take the FAA exam. So Greg, what is this book about? Well, 50, 60, 70 years ago. I mean, I got my first license in college 50 years ago, maybe. Oh, I hate to admit that long. The FAA has to have a way to ask questions of pilots or these other types of pilots, recreational, sport, etc. And they even on this book printed remote pilot, even though they didn't change the book at all. They just said, yeah, you got to use this book for the remote exam as well. So this is the Airman Knowledge Test Supplement. It's not secret. You can download it. You can buy it for $10, get it on Amazon, wherever. Why do you need to know this? Well, they designed it for pilots. If you're taking the pilot test, they'd show you, for instance, get it up here, this beautiful compass, and you're flying along and say, which direction are you going? There's my assistant. Which way are you going? Or they'd show you the peek at this one. Okay, there's your artificial horizon. Gee, which way are you turning? How many degrees of bank do you have? So you see, they have to ask pilot questions, but this book also has lots and lots of charts. And so here's an aviation chart. I'll show you one. In your course, you will study aviation charts. So all those little circles and squares and yellow things and blue lines and where's the blue water and the highways, mostly you're going to learn what airports are. And there's a couple airports in this picture. And you have to be able to look at a chart where you're going to fly, whether it's on your phone or on a map or whatever, and figure out what kind of airspace you want to fly in. And is it controlled airspace? Is there an airport there or whatever? So this will be part of your test. So let me go back to share this thing again. I think we need to go back here and click there. AJ, give me a word. I haven't heard anybody. I just want to make sure I'm still happening.
Yeah, it's looking good. It's
All
going
right,
good.
great. That's good to know. Thank you. Okay, moving along here. Let's go to the next one. So how does this happen? How does the FAA exam happen? There's a company called PSI, and they're a national testing agency. They test for everything. They do tax tests and Salesforce tests and electrician tests and water department tests. And, any agency that does testing, they can contract with PSI to do that. They're contracted by the FAA to do FAA tests, which includes drone tests, private pilot tests, commercial tests, etc. So they're a contractor for testing. And here is that you will go to their homepage. This is PSI. This is what their homepage looks like. You can go right now and find a test center near you and see, well, where could I find a test center? And I'll talk about finding a test center, but you can find the PSI test center right here. Click under there. And then to sign up for the drone test, you will have to sign in, create an account. It's the whole password, hello, and drive through this. And you get eventually to an area. You can say, here's my zip code. And they say, okay, we got a test center 5 miles from you, 20 miles from you, 50 miles from you, whatever. Pick one. What day would you like to test on? You pick a date range. Okay. And they'll come up. These test centers are open. They have these times for that test. And so you can pick your test times. So you will do it through this site right here. Where are their test centers? PSI always has a test center, a city center. So if you look up PSI, whatever city you're in, if it's a fairly large city, in Colorado, I think the smallest city they're in is Grand Junction or Pueblo, but certainly the bigger cities. If a college is near you that teaches flight or flight courses, they very often do FAA testing, and they will be included in the list of test centers. Or flight schools near airports. So schools where you go to learn and get your pilot license or your advanced license also do this testing. For instance, for Denver folks, Rocky Mountain Airport has 2 or 3 flight schools, and all of them do FAA testing, which includes the drone test. So if you're up in the Northwest area, the Denver area, or Boulder, it's convenient. I'm in South Denver, and we've got a favorite test center right near Centennial Airport. So over here on the right side, here's a typical exam station. To take the test, you will sign in, show your license, which, by the way, please use the same address on your license as you sign up for the FAA, because they're going to look for the same address to make sure it's you. You're going to show your driver's license, your government ID. They will sign you in. You will leave your phone, watch, ball cap stuff in a little locker somewhere, and you will go to a cube that looks about like this, and a screen, mouse, headsets, earplugs. The book will be there. You don't take it in there. Calculator. There's very little arithmetic needed in the exam. Don't worry about that. Pens and scrap paper and a magnifying glass. And if they don't have a magnifying glass, ask for one, because this little book has tiny, teeny maps. It's way easier to read some of the stuff with a magnifying glass. Now you will figure this out when you're doing study practice tests and you're using this book for practice questions. You'll go, gee, that's really small. So you'll discover why it would be nice to have a magnifying glass in for the test.
Hey, Greg,
So,
we
yeah,
have a question from Mark. He asks, is the test open book or is it a proxy required? Or is a proxy required?
okay, it is not open book. There, you are doing this off of your knowledge. What does proxy mean? What does that mean?
I'm wondering if I'm wondering if he's asking if there's like a like a mock test beforehand, I believe.
Okay,
Is that
there.
kind of what
Well,
you're referring to, Mark?
yeah. Let me tell
If
you
it's
about that.
online. Yeah, if you
Two,
wonder if it's online.
two things. Let me help you out there right there. First of all, one of the practice test options you have is to go to PSI right here. If you can see that screen up here in the corner, it will say, it doesn't say this anymore. This is an old slide. It says exam help or exam. I forget what it says, but it's something with exams. You click on that and you can take a practice test for free, no cost, right here from PSI. And because they created this format, I mean, this is their test, the practice exam looks just like the real exam, which is great because now you're used to the format. It's a 42 question practice exam. It's got pretty good questions on it. They will email you back your score. And at the end of my 2-day course, I remind students about this. You can take PSI's very own practice test and go right up there to practice. You can do this right now too. You want to go see what the questions look like? Go find this PSI test. All you have to do is Google PSI FAA testing, and you will get the link to this page. And if you just want to say, hey, I want to see a practice exam, and you put in unmanned for the test, there's only one test that begins with U, and you can play with the practice test right there. The next thing to mention is when you start the test, when they open up your little screen here, they're going to say, is this you? Yes, got to match your name to you. Then they will say, there's a boilerplate. You're taking this test. You've never taken it before, whatever. You're not going to take pictures of my screen. Yes, yes, yes. And finally, they will say, okay, you've got a practice test. Goodbye. If they help you that far. So the proctor walks out, and I think I have this on my next page here. No, I think I'm going to come to it. I will show you what the practice test screen looks like, but it starts with a practice test. It'll say, what is the capital of the United States? Washington, Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, click. And so you can mess with this and you can kind of get used to how it works. But again, if you did the practice test like days earlier here, you took their whole practice test, you'll be very comfortable with this format. So hope that answered the question. So what are the topics, Greg? Greg, what is this? Here's what the FAA officially tells you the topics are. Regulations. Regulations are the nuts and bolts. Here, you can do this, you can't do that. You can go this high, you can't go that fast. It's really the black and white part of drone regulations. And fairly straightforward, fairly easy to learn regulations. And you should get them all right because it's a yes or no. And so that's about 15 to 25% of the test. Airspace is charts. Looking at a chart, figuring out where is the sky? Are there airports here, not airports here? Is this controlled airspace or not controlled? So that's a chunk of the test. Weather, we do lots of weather. It's not deep dive, but it's boy, everything you've ever done. What causes weather? The sun. What's dew point? What's a thunderstorm? What's cold front? Da, 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 da. Simple stuff you're used to. And then at the end, we actually read an aviation weather report because they're on the test. And good news, the orange book has the test questions in it, so you can actually go look at the weather questions. And if you can read the weather report, hey, you'll do great on the weather questions. Loading and performance. Loading is a fancy word in the flying world for you want to get something to fly, you have to load it right. You can't make it too heavy and you can't make it off balance. So this is about aerodynamics, and especially with drones, how to make sure you're not overloading them and you're not making them off balance, which is dangerous. And then finally, operations. This is bizarre. The FAA has decided that drone pilots need to know how airports work. And I don't mean in detail, but okay, there's a runway. When an airport's leaving, which way do they go? When they're landing, how do they come in? How do you pick a runway? Suppose they just want to go round and round and do, touch and go practice landings. It's 30 minutes of instruction and 30 minutes you're done, you're good. But that also gets on the test. And the last place most drone pilots want to be is anywhere near an airport. So, but that some reason they decided that's going to be in the drone exam world. So I'm going to quickly drive through the level of difficulty. because I imagine there's still a little anxiety, and that's what I deal with in my class. I don't know, I haven't studied anything in years. So, like I said, the three main subject areas are flight regulations, and I'll give you some samples in a minute. Airspace, where you can and can't fly. You get questions about that. Specialty areas are basic drone aerodynamics. I just talked about that. How to make your drone, fly, or what are the things that would make your drone not fly? Oops, jumped ahead. Let's go back here, Greg. There we go. Human factors. So we spend a little time in the drone studies talking about safety and physiology. Like, you don't want to fly alcohol or drug issues. Meds are a big deal for the FAA. And then safety planning is a big deal. And then there's just some nickel and dime stuff that all my students are familiar with. Using radios on the job, emergency procedure planning, not difficult. So like I said, we train students to do this in 2 8-hour days, and that includes a bunch of practice tests. So it's not really awful to get through, and my high school students get great scores. And so study programs, of course, I'm shamelessly telling you about our course, but most of you will probably look at an online option, and that's great. There are good courses out there. I will mention one at the end. And that means about 14, 15 hours of watching videos, taking practice tests. And when you're pretty comfortable with the practice tests, then you'll go sign up for the exam as I walked you through it, and you'll go take your exam. So, and for a deep dive, if anybody really wants to go way deep into some sample questions, these are the kinds of things you will know after you've studied up for the exam. How high can you fly a drone above the ground? How high can you fly a drone above tower? That's actually a different story. What are the rules to fly at night? Find an airport on the aviation chart. Is a high temperature day good or bad for flying? Is hot weather better or worse for flying? And what does that mean, good or bad? So you figure that out. What are the dangers of thunderstorms? Don't we know? Not hard. Read an aviation weather report. Hey, the good news is all the questions are in the exam book. You can read them and get ahead of the test with that. How do you include risk management in flying? So, so those are the things. By the way, here's a picture of the practice test itself. After the proctor leaves you in front of your computer, you will be on this screen. And it's usually this question: which of the following is the capital of the United States? Washington, New York, Chicago, Illinois. So you click Washington, I hope. You have to go to the next slide, which is down here. You actually control the forward and back. So if you take their practice test, you will know how this works. There's forward, there's back, exit when you're all done. And you say, Greg, how do I go from 1 to 60? If you click right here, you get a big menu 1 through 60, and you can go find any question you want. Number 3, number 18, number 27. You can bookmark questions. You say, gee, I want to go back and look at that one. So you click right here on this bookmark. And so, like I said, and if you do the practice test through PSI, you'll be very comfortable with this screen. So after passing the exam, you will go back to the FAA pilot site. It has a fancy name: Integrated Airman Certification and Rating Application, IACRA. And again, you will already have a password and name because you had to do that to get your FTN number. But now you will go back in with your test results, and it'll say pass. And like one piece of paper from the test center, it'll say pass, yes. And it'll have a number on it for a test number. You'll go back in and you'll apply for a new license called pilot. What kind of pilot? Want remote pilot? Okay. Did you take the test? Yes, I did. Put in the test number, name, address, phone number, birthday, blah, 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 and email, and you hit send. And in about a week, you should get instructions to print a temporary license. So if everything works out, about a week after you take the test, and if you pass the test, great. Which, does anybody not pass the test? If you want to ask that question, great. Very few don't pass. And if they don't pass first time, they nearly always pass second time. So I lose very few people. So, let me, I do have a little bit ahead. I did want to show a few things about the course. I got some show and tells here. So let me stop share here and just come back to me. So I mentioned charts. In my class, you will get this chart. This is called a sectional chart. Sectional meaning it is a section of the country, and the section that we use is Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico. This is a chart written by the FAA for pilots to look down and see the world and go plan a flight. So first thing a pilot's going to do is they either get out a computer or an iPad, or they'll get actually a paper chart. the reason I teach with a paper chart, you can buy one of these for $10, is because the charts in here, and I'll open it up to, let's go find Denver. So here is a picture of Denver, and you'll learn to read that. Denver's a huge airport, so it gets big blue runways and blue circles around it, and you'll figure that all out in the course. And so then you go to the test, and the test says, hey, we need to test you on big blue airports. There's only one big airport in this book. It is Dallas. And so they like to ask questions about Dallas. So here's the book, and they'll say, go to figure 25. Hey, what do you know? A great big airport with blue runways, which is Dallas Fort Worth Airport. And it doesn't cover all the ground, but it covers big chunks of the sky. So that is why we do a paper chart in class. We learn to read it because this book is full of charts and you will get questions on those charts. So these are pictures we've used before. And if you've explored using a drone, I'm sure you've come across tutorials on looking at roof damage with a drone. So that's one of the things you can do is mark this. I get a lot of roof inspectors and roof company folks, project managers who are doing, look at your roof, if we find damage, off the insurance company with a report and, the one-day roof replacement. And there's some companies specializing in that with their software. So let me also mention the other thing is you can get a drone, an enterprise drone, Mavic 3 Enterprise with a thermal camera. But I know also when I was at InterNACHI, you guys have great handheld thermal devices. They're way easier to use than a drone. So you can look at windows and heat loss and so on, but a drone can do this too. They can show you heat profiles. And so that's another one of the advantages of leveraging your new tool. And let me just mention new software. So there's a company out there called Loveland Innovations, and I've only come across it because my roofing customers, this is one of the companies they look at. Several. There's the big one is EagleView, and then there's one or two others. Loveland is one of them that make software that actually either drive your drone around or they gather up all the pictures that you've taken and they create a report from those pictures. So Loveland Innovations I actually found a product called, this is for inspections. So they actually help you use your phone to take inspection pictures and help you create a report out of that. So some of you guys may be familiar with it. I'm not familiar with it, haven't studied it, but I just wanted to point out there are now software tools, and I mean, AJ, I'm sure has done other webinars on others that you guys have looked at that will use the data your drone has gathered, take the pictures, and help you compile a report. So, and of course, the hot thing now is AI. AI is smart and it can help organize them, and by looking at your pictures, identify areas of damage that maybe you want to highlight and automatically do them for you. So I just want to mention them. I don't have any connection to them, but my roofing folks have pointed me at different companies now that are talking about their software. The most exotic one is EagleView, which actually, if you want to go sign up with them and spend some money, they will send you their drone. And your job is to go there, put it on the ground, tell it where it is, and watch it. You basically are the pilot in command, but it figures out where it needs to go. It takes a big picture of the roof, and then it flies this little pattern, uploads all the data. You don't own the data. It goes to EagleView, and then they send you a report. And of course, that costs more money, but some folks want to go that route as well. So let me deviate a little bit here. Just throw something in that you may not have expected. Some of you may have a drone. Some of you may be messing around with a drone. And you may also have folks ask, you're going to be the new drone expert, after you've done this course. Do hobby drone flyers have to follow rules? I told you, the other category of folks not with a license is hobby drone flyers. Do they have to follow rules? Yes. In fact, all of the airspace rules, same ones, hobby flyers have to observe. Well, so you go buy a drone, and anybody walk into Best Buy, you can buy a drone, bring it home, say, I'm just going to fly it in the backyard. Well, you can get a separate registration card and put a number on all your hobby drones. Now, if you have a drone for business, the way you register that with the FAA is it gets its own number, like any asset, business asset. But if you have hobby drones, you have a personal number. So here's my personal drone card for my hobby drones. And this came in my license card that lets me fly hobby drones. if your drone is heavier than 0.55 pounds, even a hobby drone, must be registered. Okay, I got to put my number on it. You may only fly for recreational purposes. You have to follow the safety guidelines of a community-based organization. What? Well, this is the FAA saying we want you to follow rules, but we don't want to get in the business of enforcing all these rules. So go find an organization that has safety rules and follow their rules. So I actually have in my Go Fly book safety rules from the Academy of Model Aeronautics. It's the #1 hobby RC controlled ancient club based organization, and they have drone hobby safety rules. I keep them in my book, and they're basic safety rules. Hobbyists also must keep their drone within visual line of sight. That's a universal rule for all drone flyers. All drone flyers have to get out of the way of manned aircraft. We all have to get prior authorization to go in controlled airspace, and that's why in the license you learn how to find controlled airspace. Everybody has to fly at or below 400 feet. You have to comply with all airspace restrictions. And the other one people don't know a lot, but the FAA is trying to promote this, is hobby flyers have to pass an aeronautical knowledge and safety test. It is online. When you buy a drone, you pull out a piece of paper, it should say, go take the trust test, which is the remote. Well, let's back up here. I didn't mean to do that. Click on it, click, boom. The remote unmanned safety test. And it's an open book online, and you print your little certificate that you took it, and hobby flyers are supposed to have this with them when they fly their little drones. So how many folks don't? I'm sure most, but the FAA is promoting this because this is how they want even hobby flyers to understand all the safety rules and fly safely and not interfere with manned aircraft. So if anybody tells you, I'm going to fly hobby, I don't have to follow any rules, the answer is, excuse me, no. You have to follow pretty much near all the same rules that a Part 107. So a big website for you guys if you want to get started would be the FAA's own website. They have a website with lots of information. So if you said, Greg, where would I start? Right here, www.faa.gov/UAS/getting started. And it has both hobby flying or recreational flying. They go back and forth on that word, usually recreational, and flying for business or non-hobby. And that's what you want to explore. And it pretty much everything I've told you, it has more detail on. So this is a great website to start doing your homework on if you want. So AJ has allowed me to do a shameless promotion of my company's enterprise, and this will apply mostly to folks probably who can access our course. So just a brief commercial interjection here. Unmanned presents our drone license course school every month near Centennial Airport. So it's in Centennial near the 470 if you're coming from one big direction or another. We teach it Wednesdays and Thursdays because it's 8-hour days, and that prepares students on Friday to take the exam. So we say give 3 days of a week to getting your drone license. Wednesday, Thursday course, study every night. We do a review Friday morning in the classroom or Zoom if you want. And then that's when we tell people that Friday, schedule your exams. We do it every month. Here's our website. You can go find our, our next course is June 26, 27, and then there's August and blah, 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 blah. And because I'm really delighted to be able to make this offer to you guys and have AJ sponsor this course on your website, I want to offer you guys 25% off of the unmanned drone license course through the end of 2024. So if you take any one of our courses through the end of 2024, 25% off. Now that's a big chunk of change. Our course is $799. It's been that way for like 7 years. We've never raised the price. That is 2 full days of instruction, and it's people pay it out of their pocket, and companies pay for it because that is, we think, the fastest way to the very solid assurance of earning your license by date certain. Within a week of taking our course, we're pretty confident you're going to get your license. But that's, for some folks, that is a reach. So for you, if you're, out of your business, you'll get $200 off. Just use this InterNACHI code when you're signing up for our course, and it'll take $200 off our tuition. So we'd be happy to let you know about that. So with that, here's my last July class, July or September, I forget. In the classroom we use And the dog was there for the entire class. He was very well behaved. He was a comfort dog, I guess you call it. But he didn't take the test, but he definitely behaved in every other respect. And you get a certificate from us that you passed, which is good for not much. Because what we want you to do is go take the test, and that will be your win. So I don't think I have any slides beyond this. Nope. So I'm going to get out of the share and come back in person here. And now I can see the chat on the side here, AJ. So yeah, so we did answer the name of the practice exam on PSI. Well, if you're registering for the exam, it is the same test. It is called the Unmanned Aircraft General. So you can go in through the practice menu and get a practice version of that test. Or when you're really register for it and you need an FTN number, because as you go into it, it will say, did you get your FTN number from the FAA? And then you have to do that. So do we have online classes? No, we did during COVID. We had no choice. Sorry. It's a live class. It's hard to find a live online class. That's tough. Probably the other alternative for most people is an online course. And I don't have any relationship to it, but the one that I get the best reports from people who've taken it is pilotinstitute.com. So they're a pilot school in Arizona, very smart people. There's a main guy who does a lot of videos about drones. Greg, his name is also Greg. Good for him. And if you go to their website, you'll find the drone course. I think with discounts, it's $150. And if you're going to do an online, give yourself like, 10 nights of hour and a half, 2 hours, do videos and practice tests. And you end up in the same place ready to take the test. So I see, AJ, I'll just jump to this one. If you fail, is there a time before redoing? Is there more cost? The answer is you cannot take the test again for 2 weeks. So you can try to sign it up again. No. So you got 14 days. You can't do it. Then you can do it anytime. Yes, it will cost you $175 again to retake the test. So another reason to try to get it right the first time. And again, shameless advertisement for our students, because we're so confident that they will pass the first time, that our deal is, and you'll see it on our website, if you fail the first time, we will pay $175 for you to retake the exam. So that's just our little world of Aon Unmanned, our course here in Centennial in Denver. But yeah, you will pay again to take that again. Any others? AJ?
And I'll go ahead and just give a little testimony for you, Greg. That class was top notch. You guys already know that if you're in the business of home inspection, you're taking your education pretty seriously. That means whenever you were getting into learning about home inspection, some of you guys might have taken some of the live classes or you took online classes. This is just another class to put in your tool belt to help you while you're out there in the field. So definitely consider taking it. I only missed 2 questions, I think, when I took my test. It was
That's
great.
a great score.
And afterwards, I
Base
went.
of the base. Smart.
Yeah.
Good for
And then
you.
afterwards, I went and took the InterNACHI pilot training course, and you can also become an InterNACHI drone pilot, and you can add that to your site and your ancillary services as well.
Yeah, and let me also mention, so I mentioned Phil because I used him way earlier because he took the course. Did I not show? He used an InterNACHI resource. He had dummied up these door hangers, and he gave me one, and it's very cool because he puts his name on it. He's got his whole company right there. Focus. Come on, Gadget. Can you do that? Anyway, Phil Smith. All right. And my camera's not loving this one. Oh well. There you go. And he says, and it's not a bad idea if you're going to fly a drone around homes to hang door hangers on next door homes, because some people get worried about drones, or you're spying on me, whatever. But it's also a great advertising tool. So he puts in, I just want to let you know I'm here, and here's my number. And hey, does your house need a home inspection as well? This is in the InterNACHI marketing toolkit. So I think that's a great idea. Yeah. By the way, AJ, if here is the full, I did an offer page. So the offer I've just described, AJ will post this for you guys to download. This is the brochure on our Save $200 for the rest of the year. If you take our monthly course, use the code $200 off the tuition. And, our next one is July June 26, 27, July 17, 18, August 14, 15, all the way through December. If you figure out that it would work for you and it would be a good choice for you to try to attend the live course with us in Centennial.
And you can find that brochure and the information for that on the webinar page of this particular webinar. So, and the recording, you're probably already at the page. If you look down below, you'll see the information and the link to Aon Unmanned to their website, so you guys can register for that class as well. If anything else, Greg, we can wrap it up here. I appreciate your time. I thank you for coming on and giving your knowledge on drones. Like I said, it was pretty popular from some of the live classes that I've been to. People were talking about it. A lot of guys going to Costco and picking up the Mini 3. Just gotta know what to do whenever you do get those things, guys. Don't get in trouble.
Yeah, so even the Mini 3, like there's hobby rules. Go to the FAA and just click on recreational drones. Make sure you're squared away for that. So you start right. But anyway, I want to thank AJ and InterNACHI for the invitation to do this, folks. It's really a pleasure. I mean, this is what I do, and I love to share the knowledge. It's a lot of fun. Thank you. Thanks.
All right, guys, you go out and have a good night, have a good week, and we'll see you on the next one. Don't forget to visit nachi.org/webinars, and I'll see you on the next one, guys. Take it easy. Greg, have a good night.
All right. Thanks, AJ. See you guys.